بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمن بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي زدني علما والحقني بالصالحين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم. Let me just run back here. Okay, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The Quran states that it is clear guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying clear guidance. Not just guidance, but clear guidance. Meaning the direction that's being given cannot be confused or misconstrued with anything else. If you ever did Google Maps on your phone while walking, you're going to get lost initially because you don't even know which way to go. It's confusing. Sometimes if the signals are not picking up and you start driving, you assume it was telling you to go that way, but in actuality you're supposed to go that way. And so it requires you to make adjustments to get onto the track that is calling you towards. Our Quran is clear guidance, which means that anyone who endeavors to understand the path of the Quran will never fail, inshallah. Say inshallah. Because the Quran is the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent it down for a purpose. Not just for us as Muslims, but for the entire humanity. So recapping last month, alhamdulillah, we started our series and we made the case of why we're discussing the three subject matters. Does anyone remember which one of those three are? Could someone tell me one of those three things? Anyone? There are three reasons why we are trying to historically, biblically, Islamically understand history. Anyone tell me one of three? One of the reasons is Dajjal. What is it, everyone? I want to hear you all. Dajjal. The Antichrist. The one that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there was not a messenger sent, but the messenger warned his people of Dajjal. Which means that this is a severe matter that every one of us should be aware of. Yes or no? And how many of us could stand up right now and say, I know enough about this? We don't even discuss this topic. And as I said last month, reiterating myself, if every prophet alayhi wassalam, were warning their people of the Antichrist, that means you and I should know more. Why? Why should we know more? Why should we be more equipped and well aware of the situation? Anyone? More clear message from the Quran. Yes, what else? You're prepared for when it comes. You're getting real close. I like that. Fitna. Okay, test. That's good. Anyone else? Yes. You're getting close too. We have more information than previous nations had. Let me make it simple. Every prophet warned their people, yes? Did Dajjal come in those times? No. Dajjal didn't come at the time of Nuh alayhi salam. It didn't come at the time of Dawud alayhi salam. It didn't come at the time of Musa alayhi salam. It did not come at the time of Isa alayhi salam. So if we're checking off all the nations or crossing off all the nations in which Dajjal didn't come and they are warning their people of Dajjal and we are the final nation, what does that mean? He will come in our time. This is not something like a baton that we're going to pass over to someone else. He's coming in our time, meaning in our ummah. Could be in your life, your children's life, or someone's life. So this is one of the reasons we are going into this topic. Not from one angle of approach, but multiple angles of approach. As I said, we're going to look at it historically, biblically, and also Islamically. Number 2, what was the second reason that we're doing this? Anyone? Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Could everyone say Ya'juj and Ma'juj? Gog and Magog. The one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will command Adam alayhi salam to take out from his progeny. Take out from his progeny 999 out of 1,000 for Jahannam. This is a severe matter. If we're all going to Jannah and we know that 999 out of every 1,000 is going to Jahannam, this is a matter of concern. Yes or no? Am I only crazy person here? It's a matter of concern. And the Sahaba almost fainted when they heard that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, don't worry. I pray to Allah that you will be a quarter of the people of Jannah. I pray to Allah that you will be a third of the people of Jannah. And they said, I pray to Allah, you will be half the people of Jannah. What does this mean? It means that Gog and Magog is a people, humans, that have come from before time, and that their impact in numbers during the time of the Ummah of Rasulullah will not be as large as previous nations. Does that make sense? Because just say there was 1 billion of them now, that's a large number. But their influence will be strong. Their numbers, based on my research thus far, will not be equivalent to what their numbers were before. But the impact will truly be great. And the third and final reason why we're doing this 13-part series, which may become 14, this is actually number 13 in front of you tonight, is Isa alayhi salam. Because Isa alayhi salam is a unique prophet and a controversial figure in our world. The most controversial figure to exist on the face of this earth. Not only amongst the people of the books, but also amongst the Christians themselves. And we spoke about it extensively in our last month's topic. Now, what I was thinking from that time till now was, we're calling this from the Maseeh to the Messiah, from Isa alayhi salam to Dajjal, but it's very hard to grasp the timeline unless you and I understand the history of the world. Does that make sense? History of our world. And that is why, instead of going into part 2 tonight, recall part 1 was, we went through the New Testament to see if Isa alayhi salam was God. We're doing a very unbiased research. Is it possible that Isa alayhi salam in the Bible is God? We tried to understand it. We analyzed multiple verses. We cross-referenced it with the Quran. And I think we came to a similar conclusion. What was that, everyone? That Isa alayhi salam is not Allah. We came to that conclusion. But we used the New Testament for that. Tonight we were supposed to go to the Old Testament and see if God was Jesus, peace be upon him. And the reason we're doing this, brothers and sisters, is that you need to turn every stone to make sure that in your heart you have a clear understanding of who Isa alayhi salam is. Because guess what? Dajjal will come mimicking who is Isa. He will come and say that he's the promised one. He will be the promised one for some, but not for all. And as the Jews and Christians try to come to terms with who is Jesus, Muslims should not be on the sidelines confused. How many Muslims today know that Isa alayhi salam did not die on the cross? You'll be amazed. You will be amazed. How many of us know as Muslims that Isa alayhi salam did not die, but he's going to return? Again, we think of this as general knowledge. Everyone should know this. No, brothers and sisters. If there is not an effort made to understand something, people will not know it. So since Isa alayhi salam, his time as a prophet and his return as a follower of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is two unique time periods, I thought to myself, why don't we go all the way back to the beginning of time and then make our way all the way to the time of the Day of Judgment, inshallah. But we're not going to do that tonight. We're going to start from Adam alayhi salam and inshallah come to the 1900s. Is that fair? That's a lot of time to cover, but we'll cover inshallah within our time frame. We talked about this over and over again. As Muslims, we claim that our faith is universal and eternal, but we don't see the relevancy of our faith in the world today. Not only do we see no relevancy, but we don't see how our faith could relate to our current world. And I made a very broad claim that Islamic transmission of knowledge and scholarship has become cookie cutter and it's no longer research based. Does that make sense? This morning we were having a very extensive discussion on a very important WhatsApp group about domestic violence and how the Quran speaks about hating women, right? And you will go through all the tafasir and all the scholars will tell you فَضْرِبُوهُنْ, to hit them means to hit them with a miswak or to hit them with a dupatta, a hijab. This is an analysis made known as tafsir by certain scholars. Scholars can be flawed. The Quran isn't flawed, is it? Cookie cutter shape means where there is no aspiration to research the matter. Rather, it's just whatever we learned, whatever we're reading, we're just going to follow that. Does that make sense? Cookie cutter means that all our institutions, from all ends, are only reading text and transmitting text without researching its depth. Can I hear upstairs? I'll bring this one down, inshallah. There's always been a problem with that microphone. That's good. How's that, inshallah? Okay. And so why I call it cookie cutter is that there's an unfortunate reality that we as scholars today cannot do our own research from the Quran Hadith. It's considered disrespectful to the past scholars if you try to research something new from the Quran. And we say that if our Salaf Salih, our predecessors, if they were not 100%, let me just turn this on. If our predecessors are not 100% on board, we should not even venture to that. So that is why topics of such importance are not discussed. No one talks about these topics. Very seldomly do they. And so I made that claim last month, and I want to prove that claim this month, inshallah. So let's go into our history. Brothers and sisters, let me ask of you, if the sisters want, they can text, inshallah, their answers, but it's just a simple question. How long do you feel the world has been around? Yes. More than 12,000 years. I like that. You attended a class, didn't you? You killed it here. Brothers, how long do you think the world has been around? Let's understand. You have to grasp history. And I want you to go home today grasping history. How long has the world been around? How many? More than a billion years. 4.5? 4.5 billion years, mashallah. Yes. 3 million years. Everyone's good? Yes. Mashallah, mashallah. What's your name? Isa. Isa hit the nail on the head. He goes, it all depends, because if you don't know when Adam alayhi salam was created, you don't know history. And he's spot on. He is spot on. But what happens when I tell you the world's been around for millions of years? What does that give to you? It gives you a sense of carelessness. The world's been around for a few millions of years, and it'll be around for another few millions of years, so who cares, right? Global warming isn't a real phenomenon. In fact, the world keeps on freezing and heating up and freezing. It's just something that happens. When you are looking at a number that's so large to grasp, you cannot understand the severity of a message and a messenger. If the Muslim calendar is 1440, if the Jewish calendar is 5,780, they believe Musa a.s. was around 5,000 years ago. And I'm confident some of you here are thinking he was around millions of years ago. Adam a.s. was around maybe 3,000, 4,000 years before that. Our world history isn't so far. To kind of put into context, is that if we look at Adam a.s., and please don't fixate on the images, I'm still working on practical research and putting numbers together. But basically, from BC, from Adam a.s., we're looking at close to 4,000 years before Jesus, peace be upon him. And if you look at the timeline as it falls itself down, as it comes down from Adam a.s. to Idris a.s. to Nuh a.s. to Hud a.s., Salih, Ibrahim, Lut, Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, Yusuf, Shu'aib, Harun, Ayyub, Zulkifl, Musa, Dawood a.s., Yasha, then we have Ilyas, and we have Yunus, Zakaria, Yahya. If we look at maybe 4,000, let's say 5,000 years before Isa a.s., in the 5,000 years all these prophets came. This is based on someone's studies. I'm still doing mine. And then from Isa a.s. all the way to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was 571 years, or 570 years. The point to be made is, the world hasn't been around for so long. Even if we say 20,000 years, the chronology that we're using here is prophethood. From the time Allah sent the first messenger all the way down, we are not looking more than 10,000 years. Does that make sense? But if you believe there was dinosaurs roaming this earth before and a big meteor came and killed them and everything happened, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, all the questions to evolution and the theories that are out there, the Quran talks about it. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the malaika that I have created this creation, right? For this earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the angels, I've created this earth and I've created a creation for this earth. And all He had inserted on this earth was everything but the ones who are going to run it and rule it. And that was humankind. And that is why the angel said, قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Are you actually going to create on this earth those who are going to shed blood and spread mischief? They knew that there is going to be a part of the human creation that is going to do only that. It's called fasad. What is it called? And I want you all to remember this word, because it's going to come up a lot actually throughout the course of our journey. Yes. Fasad in English, not fully. Fasad means mischief, chaos, bloodshed, war, destruction, turmoil. That's fasad basically from the Quran, but mainly means war. And we look at the Prophet's lines of generations. Adam a.s. was the first human being, and who was the second Adam? Nuh a.s. And the reason we talk about Nuh a.s. being the second is because a lot of our shu'uba wa qaba'ila, our tribes and nations, came out from the children of Nuh a.s. Ham, Sam, Yafis, and what else do we have? Ham, Sam, Yafis, Ham, Sam, and Canaan. Canaan was the one who drowned it. Yes. Correct. So So let's look at that. Brothers asking, we're calculating the time of human existence from the time of Adam alayhi salam on this earth, but is there a possibility the earth existed beforehand? Yes, it's possible. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created destiny. So the brother's saying there's no way of calculating 20,000, 20 million, 2 billion, whatever. No, there's not. But we know that Allah wrote destiny 50,000 years before He created the creation. And He created the creation in how many days, everyone? 6. Allah created the entire universe in how many days? 6. The question is, are those 6 days according to this world or that world? Now, 50,000 سنة مما تعدون. In the Quran it comes 50,000 years is equivalent to a day. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using that, some mufassirin say no, means a day here, to allow us to realize how important time is in the process of doing things. Allah does not need 6 days to create the universe. Do you all agree? He could say kun, and before He says kun, it's already done perfectly. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used 6 days as an educational lesson to us all that things happen with time and effort. Now, 6 days, the entire universe, right? How many days on earth alone? How many days on earth alone? When we say universe, we're talking about that universe that's constantly expanding. Remember, the universe is constantly expanding. You will not be able to use any technology to get to the edge of the universe. You can't. Allah says, وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ. We're stretching this thing. It's stretching. It's constantly stretching. He's not making it anymore. He's stretching it. So the universe is stretching. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He created this earth in how many days? No, that's the universe. Fi arba'ati ayyam, 4 days. He spent 4 of the 6 days on this blue marble. Is everyone with me on this? In that He put the mountains, the rivers, the forests, the animals. 4 days. ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى إِلَى السَّمَاءِ. Then He turned to the heavens. وَهِيَ دُخَانٌ. Have you seen those pictures of the Milky Ways and everything else? It looks like a smoke. It looks like a smoke. Allah says, وَهِيَ دُخَانٌ. And it was like a smoke. فَقَالَ لَهَا. Allah said to it and the earth, ائْتِيَا طَوْعًا أَوْ كَرْهًا. You're coming with obedience or do I have to drag you? And they said, قَالَتَا. They both said, أَتَيْنَا طَائِعِينَ. We're coming in obedience to Allah. The creation of this entire universe is in the Quran. We don't need anyone else to tell us. Are there worlds outside of this world? Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil. I don't hear you all. Alameen. Worlds. Now some mufassirin say that means the world of the trees and the plants and the insects and the water and the sky. It could mean that also. And it could also mean there's worlds. But our concern is this world. Yes, Zaid. Jinns? I want you to show me that verse and we'll talk about it next time, inshallah. I don't want to go off topic on this one. Okay? So do you understand, everyone? If we were to take the prophetic line, 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 years. But let's go, I want you to take that number of billions, bring it down to 10, 15,000, because we're going to stretch this history within our time. There is a hadith that's bothering everyone in this world. Have you read this hadith, everyone? Musnad, from the Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah. Hudayfa radiallahu ta'ala narrated that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, prophethood will remain amongst you as long as Allah wills. How long was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prophet? 23 years. Does prophethood continue after him? No, it doesn't. Then the caliphate, the khilafah, on the lines of prophethood shall commence. That means the Khulafa ar-Rashidun, on the lines of prophethood. He was very particular saying this word because khilafah lasted to 1924. The khilafah on the line of prophethood, we'll find out today how long that lasted. He says the caliphate on the lines of prophethood shall commence and remain as long as Allah wills. So what will there be first? Prophethood. How many prophets did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send? Thousands, tens of thousands. Some say 124,000. That's fine. And that's possible because Bani Israel sometimes killed multiple prophets in a day. They're not brand name prophets, they were prophets. Understand? So prophethood will finish. When prophethood finishes, khilafah will happen. Then corrupt, erosive, monarchy will take place, kingdomship. I'm not giving any tafsir tonight, so please don't expect something from me. Monarchy will take place and it will remain as long as Allah wills. After that, an autocrat kingship will emerge. It will remain as long as Allah wills. Then the khilafah shall come once again based on the precept of prophethood. Why does the world have an itch against the name khilafah? I'm not going to answer that. I don't want you to answer that question. Why does the world have a rash when it comes to the word khilafah? The so-called Islamic khilafah ended 96 years ago. 96 years ago. But the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is telling us something which is very, very prophetic. Prophecy. But we have to understand these things in its rightful order. Because ISIS does not represent the caliphate at all. The caliphate was never a dictatorship, a rule of destruction and overtaking. Read the letters of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh. Read the first interfaith treaties written by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Interfaith work began from the hand of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To bring unity amongst people of different faiths and to ensure as the governors of the land that they will be protected is part of an article of our Islam's history. And so, where are we in this? I'll ask you to figure it out. I'm not going to say anything. But this is a hadith that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal in his Musnad has recorded. And so now, we want to take these 10 or 15,000 years of human existence on earth. Does that make sense? Is that better, brother? If I say human existence on earth? Okay? If there was dinosaurs, remember, Adam alayhi salam was 60 cubic feet. So his chihuahua was maybe a cow. Or a triple-sized buffalo. Right? They were big. And from the time of Adam alayhi salam, human beings' size has been decreasing since. Steadily. So, I want us to put aside all this. From Adam alayhi salam, close to 5,000 years before Isa alayhi salam, and I want us to pass from Isa alayhi salam to the year 571. Now, when we say 571 or 570, I want us to put aside the Islamic Hijri calendar for tonight, because we all are accustomed to using the Gregorian calendar. And the Gregorian calendar tells us 2,000 years of what? 2,000, what is this? 2,000 years of? 2019? AD, right? AD. After death or after disappearance. I think we could use it also, right? Or after departure, we could use that also. So I want us to focus on this calendar. And I want you to skim away close to 600 years, and let's go to the year 570. Everyone's with me? What happened in 570? 569, Rasulullah's father passes away. Now this is a quick seerah. Rasulullah is born in the year 570. He goes off, of course, with Halima Sa'adiyah, comes back, goes back, comes back. Then he goes with his mother, and then his mother passes away in the year 577. 583, he goes with his grandfather to Syria. We know what happens there. He was sent back. He marries Khadija radiallahu anha at the year 595. And that's 25 years after his birth. At the age of at the year 610, how old was he, everyone? How old was he at the year 610? 40 years old. 40 full. 569, his father passed. So he was born at 570. 610, 40 years later, he receives the revelation. 3 years later, he takes this message public. The first migration to Ethiopia occurs with Muslims, close to 20. Then after that was a year of sorrow. Rasulullah went to Isra Mi'raj when? 620. So how old was he then? 50 years old, thank you. 52, he migrated to Yathrib, which then became Medina. Sorry, I don't know what I did there. Then after that there was battles. We know about the Battle of Badr, the Battle of Uhud, the Battle of the Trench, and a few others. In 628, the Quraysh, the pagans of Mecca, signed, or we could say forced signed, a 10-year treaty recognizing the Muslims' existence in Arabia, but they had to follow under their rule. What was the name of that treaty? Thank you. Sulh Hudaybiyah. Where Muslims were going to Mecca to perform Umrah, and they were told, you cannot come, you have to go back. And they signed this treaty in which they said you could come back the following year, but just for a few hours to do Umrah. We talked about that, I think, last month briefly. If not, forgive me, I'm just overlapping my head right here. But they signed a 10-year treaty. But guess what? The Meccan pagans breached the treaty later that year. So 629, the Prophet Muhammad along with allies, what did they do? They conquered Mecca. Mecca was conquered. Rasulullah then 632. How old is he now, everyone? 62. Still 62. He passes away 63. And so what happens, he goes for a pilgrimage, he comes back and he stays in Medina. A few months later he passes away. In the same month that we are currently in, Rabi'ul Awwal, Rasulullah according to the consensus of many of scholars and historians, not only was he born in this month, but he also departed in this month. So we just went from 570 years after Isa to the year 632. Is everyone with me on this? Is it good? Now let's go on to what Prophet ﷺ said. After prophethood will be Khilafah. Yes? Now the Khilafah is as follows. There's the Rashidun Caliphate, the Umayyad Caliphate, the Abbasid Caliphate. There are two sections of the Abbasid Caliphate. The one from Baghdad and the one from Cairo. Then there was the Ottoman Caliphate, and then there was the abolition of the Caliphate. I can't even speak tonight. The abolition of the Caliphate. So the Rashidun Caliphate is alaykum bi sunnati wa sunnati al-khulafa'i ar-rashidin al-mahdiyyin. Hadith of Rasulullah follow my way. What is that called? Sunnah. Wa sunnati al-khulafa'i ar-rashidin al-mahdiyyin. Follow my way and the sunnah of the khulafa'i ar-rashidin. Who are they? Could someone tell me their names quickly? Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. This is known as the Khulafa al-Rashidin. And their era was from 632. And it's such an amazing story, and I'll just tell you while we're here. You know, after Rasulullah departed, and there was a lot of chaos and confusion. If you do go for Umrah this year, Hajj, and I pray to Allah that you could see it. If you go to Masjid Nabi alayhi salatu salam, and you go back behind the masjid, so go to the back of the masjid. The grave? Oh yes, mashallah. This is the garden. Now when you're in the back of the masjid, go to the furthest right-hand corner. That's where the women enter from. It's across from the Move and Pick Hotel. It's a quite big hotel. And you follow that route going past the Move and Pick. So the Kaaba is south, you're standing in north, so you're going to go west. And if you go west where the roads are, you'll see a very unique small garden. It stands out because there's no garden there. There's trees, there's palm trees, there's flowers. Beautiful garden. It's Hadiqa Banu Sa'ida. This is where outside Medina, some of the Sahaba sat and they contemplated, what are we going to do? The Prophet ﷺ is gone. What do we do? It was there where Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was appointed the Khalifa. This year in Hajj, when he went, he took the group for a tour. It seems like they're getting ready to demolish it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it's gone. We took some final pictures with it because it's boarded up in the name of the expansion. It might be gone soon. But it's the only garden in the area. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu became Khalifa at that time. Let's go down the chain of the Caliphate. So basically, during the Rashidun Caliphate, it extended in what is known as today Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Iraq, parts of Sham, going east, going west to the north of Africa. This is North Africa. White is water, gray is land. Everyone's with me on that? So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was Khalifa for how long? I want you all to remember this. 27 months. In 27 months, 2 years and 3 months, there was this rebellion. There was ridda. People were leaving Islam. And during that time, he had to neutralize the situation. There was chaos. People said, if Rasulullah ﷺ is not alive, why should we believe in Islam? It was a very disturbing time. So most of his time went in stabilizing the ummah. After him, Umar ibn Khattab was Khalifa for how long, everyone? 10 years. From the year 634 to 644. Remember, we're starting from Isa alayhi salam to the Prophet 570. Now we're at 632. Rasulullah goes back to Allah. Now we're at 634. 634 to 644. This was when the Islamic empire expanded greatly. Under Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, the caliphate not only expanded, but it also put a footprint of how Islam should be practiced in governed land. One very unique thing happened during that time. When Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu was Khalifa, he obtained the keys to Al-Aqsa. Aqsa means what? Could someone tell me what Aqsa means? Aqsa? Huh? Thank you. Say it loudly, you can say furthest. Because Aqsa meant that from Hijaz, from the area of Makkah, Medina, the western strip of what is Saudi Arabia today, Aqsa meant that was the furthest mosque. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى, the furthest mosque. When there was a siege of Jerusalem in 637 by the Rashidun army under the command of Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah, the patriarch over there said, we give up. They were the Romans, but we're not going to give you the keys to Aqsa. We want Umar to come get it. So Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu traveled to where the same place today is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The same church today is the area where Umar ibn Khattab went and got the keys from the priest. Sophonis was the priest. He said, I want to give it to Umar. Umar ibn Khattab went with an army, yes? Yes? No. Umar radiallahu anhu alone with one of his servants and a mule or a donkey, they went to get the keys of Aqsa. His servant was saying, "Yeah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, you sit, I walk." Amir al-Mu'mineen said, "No, you sit, I walk." And so what they decided was Surah Yasin. Every time they recited Surah Yasin, they switched. So Surah Yasin was a switch. And when Umar ibn Khattab entered Jerusalem and he came to receive the keys, the patriarch didn't know who was Umar bin Khattab, the one on the donkey and the one on the ground. And Umar bin Khattab was holding the donkey. And he gave the keys to Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. He knew the Muslims had to pray, so he said, "Come pray at the church." And Umar bin Khattab said, "No. May it not be that I pray at the church today and that tomorrow people will say the church belonged to the Muslims." He prayed outside on the steps east of the church. Brothers and sisters, Jerusalem is your thermometer. What is it? Thermometer. What's happening to this ummah, the fever, is measured by Jerusalem. Just remember that. If you want to know the severity of our condition, look at Jerusalem. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, where he prayed today, there is a masjid. It's known as the Masjid of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. Next to or opposite the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That's the minaret of Masjid Umar. What is this, everyone? The Dome of the Rock was added to Masjid Aqsa in 691. It was renovated greatly, and today it stands as the most beautiful piece of architecture in Islamic heritage in our world. The dome is made out of gold. It's gold leaf. Surah Isra and Surah Yasin adorn the outsides of this masjid. Internally, it's just another amazement. Windows, mihrabs, pillars. It's a history upon history of the Dome of the Rock. You were there, right? You saw that? Okay, so Dome of the Rock. This is known as Qibli Masjid. What is this, everyone? This masjid is what everyone thinks is Aqsa. This is known as Qibli Masjid. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu actually built this masjid out of wood, and it was built on the southern compound of Aqsa because it was facing the Qibla. So he made the masjid on the southmost part so that if it was to be expanded, it would have been expanded from the south to the north. Because remember, Jerusalem is on north, Qibla is south. So in Aqsa, he built it on the southern point. Not in the middle, not the right, left, in the southern point. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu built it in the 15th year of Hijri when he got the keys from the patriarch and he saw that the entire Aqsa was in a very neglected state. The entire compound was full of garbage, dirt. One of the masjids was being used as a stable for the animals. Why was this masjid abandoned? We'll learn in the upcoming months, inshallah. He built it as a wooden building, as I told you already, to accommodate 3,000 worshippers. The current building, its construction is rooted back to the Umayyad Caliph Abdul Malik ibn Marwan and his son Walid bin Abdul Malik, and renovations have occurred throughout the year from the Umayyads, Abbasids, and the Fatimids. When the Crusaders occupied Masjid Aqsa, they used the Qibli Masjid as their headquarters. Salahuddin Ayyubi rahimahullah, he liberated Aqsa from the Crusaders, and he ordered that Qibli Masjid be rebuilt as its former state. And in the Qibli Masjid is the pulpit, which is the most priceless artifact of Islamic architecture in the world. And Salahuddin Ayyubi made sure that it was rebuilt in the same way, without a single nail, without a single drop of glue. It's made of wood. Now, brothers and sisters, how many of us were taught in childhood or thought till now that that's Masjid Aqsa? How many of us thought that was Masjid Aqsa? Yes? That's not Masjid Aqsa. That's called Qibli Masjid. If this entire land belongs to you, this entire masjid. And I'm to tell you and brainwash you that where Brother Barbara is sitting, these two chairs, that's your land. You'll become happy with that. But then who does all this land belong to? 98% of Aqsa is unknown to the Muslim world today. Did you know that? Aqsa is not a masjid. The entire compound is Aqsa. What is this, brothers and sisters? The entire compound. That means Masjid Qibli, Masjid Dome of the Rock, Masjid Umar bin Khattab, Masjid Buraq, Marwani Masjid, all the masjids inside, the close to 7 masjids. This entire walled area is called Aqsa. Again, this entire land, point to point, was the Qibla of the Muslims. Rasulullah was not praying towards this building. It was not built. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh built this. This area was desolated, it was ruined, it was garbage. But from this direction of Hijaz, the Prophet ﷺ prayed towards this wall of Aqsa. This is all Aqsa. Is everyone with me on this, inshallah? Let me just show you something quickly, inshallah, and we'll continue. Let me just expand this here. Okay. We all learned something right now. When we were in Canada in the 80s, they gave out free posters of the Dome of the Rock. Every masjid got a delivery of hundreds of these posters. You know what they said on the bottom? Aqsa Mosque. And then after when people started going, they said, no, that's not Aqsa Mosque. The brown one's Aqsa Mosque. And the entire compound is Aqsa. Its sovereignty, its protection is the duty of every single Muslim. We don't have to fight for it. We have to pray for it. And when Muslims stop praying for it, Allah will take it away from us. And it's when Aqsa will be taken away from us will the signs of the Day of Judgment start. It's like, someone in one of those movies has like a bomb strapped or something and they mess around with it and the time starts 4:59, 4:58. That's what's going to happen the day Aqsa is gone. Because that's when Dajjal is going to come. That's when Isa is going to come. And that's when a lot of problems will occur. That will be the downfall of the big signs. On the western side, which let me just show you again, this side right here is called the Western Wall. Everyone's with me? South, north, east, west. Here is the Buraq Mosque. Over here is known as the Western Wall, which is the Wailing Wall that the Jews worship on. The reason the Jews worship on the Western Wall is for one reason. Does anyone know? So the Temple of Solomon is what they
believe is Aqsa, right? And many people don't understand this and are not willing to accept this. Aqsa was destroyed twice. Aqsa was destroyed twice. The entire compound. The Quran says it. Read Surah Isra first page. You could do a whole history lesson on just the first page. Allah says Aqsa was destroyed twice. And that is why if you hear from the tongues of the Christians and the Jews today, they talk about the third temple of Solomon. Meaning the time is coming that they will rebuild the temple of Solomon on the entire compound. The reason that they worship here is they believe this wall is the only wall that survived from the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam. Everything else was destroyed. And for the most part, they're right. These are the stones that you can say were built by the jinns through the command of Sulaiman alayhi salam. While he stood and watched them and he passed away standing on his stick. Everyone read the Qasas al-Anbiya? He passed away on his stick. And when that stick collapsed, the jinns realized that he was already gone. And this was the only wall that's remaining. And the Buraq was tied onto this wall also. And that's why the Buraq Masjid is on that side. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he took over Jerusalem, he made sure that there is going to be a treaty that not only did he sign, but the patriarch of that time signed. And that treaty, in respect of time, was a very, very balanced treaty. They gave assurance to every person that was there to worship and for the people to stay together. There is a line, no Jew will live with them in Jerusalem. There's a reason why he wrote that. Jews lived in the immediate vicinity, but no Jews lived in Jerusalem. The reason being is Allah Himself says in Surah Bani Israel, He exiled them. He what? He exiled them 2 times. Under Nebuchadnezzar and then under the Romans. We'll learn the history coming up inshallah in a few months. And the Jews were not allowed to return, except if Allah willed. And Allah said it in the first page of Surah Isra, عَسَى رَبُّكُمْ أَن يَرْحَمَكُمْ وَإِنْ عُدْتُمْ عُدْنَا. Allah may have mercy on you and bring you back once more. But if you return to aggression and tyranny, we'll return with our force. That's Allah saying. And so, in this beautiful treaty, he made sure that taxes were paid and that Byzantine robbers were expelled so that they could rebuild this area, they could restore the churches and the crosses to its safe place, and that everyone could worship and do what they wanted to. Now, this entire treaty is written in Tarikh Tabari, a very good historical book to look into, reference point. Although that doesn't mean Jews were not allowed to be in the area, it is said that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu's own guide, Ka'b al-Ahbar, he was Jew and he was also amongst the people that was with Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. So now, from the time the Muslims got Jerusalem from 637 all the way for 462 years. What's 637 plus 462? 1090? 1099. Until the year 1099, Aqsa, the compound of Aqsa, the entire place was in the hands of the Muslims. And at that time, the Jews never lived in the Jerusalem area. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to allow them to come back. And He will allow them to come back when something happens. The Quran says it. If I say tonight, we're going to ruin our upcoming segments. But it's one of the 2 verses pertaining to Ya'juj and Ma'juj. وَحَرَامٌ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ حَتَّى إِذَا فُتِحَتْ يَأْجُوجُ وَمَأْجُوجُ وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ هَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ. Allah is saying they're not going to return until Gog and Magog are released. They are returning. Gog and Magog are released. I'm not saying it, Allah is saying it. And we'll prove it, inshallah, through our history of our quest, inshallah. But tonight, let's move forward. After Umar ibn Khattab, 644 to 656, how many years is that? 12 years, Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu was the Khalifa. These were years of turmoil. Ali radiallahu anhu, Ali karramallahu wajhah, he was around for 5 more years. So by the year 661, Khilafah of the Rashidun was ended. So where are we now? 661. Everyone's with me? 661. Let's move on, inshallah. Now, under the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Islam reached a beautiful landmass under the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This whole area of Hijaz, Najd, Emirates, what we call Oman and Yemen, all these areas were part of Islam. And then under the Rashidun, you could see how far the caliphate expanded. And then we go on to the Umayyads. Let's go into the Umayyads. The Umayyad caliphate lasted for close to 90 years. And from that point, the caliphate became hereditary. What does hereditary mean? Someone tell me? Yes. Meaning bloodline, right? It goes from the bloodline. If you're a Khalifa, you die, your son becomes Khalifa. Huh? It's kind of like a monarchy, yes. So under the Umayyads, not only did Islam expand through the Caucasus, Sindh, Maghrib, and different areas, but it covered 5.17 million square miles, making it the largest empire the world had yet seen and the 6th largest ever to exist in the world. After the Umayyads came the Abbasids. Abbasids had 2 eras. How many eras did they have, everyone? 2. The first one has the Golden Age. So this notion that the Arabs were in the Dark Ages is not true. Matter of fact, between the years 775 and 861, Islam saw the Golden Ages for the entire world. Medicine, technology, history, everything. Anything you look at, Islam was front and center. During the Abbasid Caliphate, which is named after what they believe the bloodline of Rasulullah's uncle, Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib. Their capital was in Baghdad. Where was the capital, everyone? Baghdad, in modern-day Iraq. And they had overthrown the Umayyad Caliphate in a revolution, a revolt that happened in the year 750. This is now 132 years after Hijri. During that time, not only did we see a prominence and rise in technology, science, and culture, but it actually made Islam's golden age come to light. Iraq was one of the most instrumental parts of our history. The Abbasid leadership worked hard in the last half of the 8th century under several competent caliphs. For example, we had Mansur, Harun Rashid, Ma'mun, great names that we must have heard in our historical texts and documents, and great stories of these khalifas. So where are we right now? We're in the 800s. Everyone okay? We're in the 800s? We're not going too fast, right? We've gone from Isa Islam's birth to 570 years later, Rasulullah's birth. Isa Islam's departure to Rasulullah's birth. We passed 2 eras of caliphate. Something happened around 1096. It's known as the Crusades. I want you all to study what the Crusades are. Because if there's one thing you could answer your fellow colleagues and classmates and employers and teachers, simple word. Holy war is not an Islamic word. There's no such thing as holy war in any text. Bring me a hadith or a verse of the Quran that says Harbun Muqaddasa. Anyone? None. There's no holy war in Islam. Because Islam never waged war on people of other religions. Keep that in mind. What differentiates caliphate from terrorism is Islam never waged war on a religion. Could you remember that? Islam didn't even wage war on the polytheists and the mushrikun of Makkah. They only waged conquering of Makkah because the people of Makkah broke the treaty they wrote. They went and they got Makkah. No one was killed. Hind was not killed. Abu Sufyan was not killed. No one was touched. But nowhere did Islam, now I'm not going to talk about Muslim, Islam never conquered lands where there was religion, but it conquered and it came to lands where there was tyranny, where people were unjustly being treated and harmed. It came to stop that. So the Crusades were a Christian war against Islam, most of which happened under the Roman Catholic Church between the 11th and 17th century. Yes, Dave? The term Holy War comes from Christianity, not from their text, but from their history. And these were the wars that they waged. So in the first, they won. They conquered Jerusalem and they took it over. Then, of course, there was a second, and then the third, and it continued all the way to 1212. In between which Salahuddin Ayyubi came, and we all know who Salahuddin Ayyubi is. If we do not know more than his name, we should read up on his history. Because remember, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh said, "We will not pray in your church. Your church is your church is your church." As Muslims, our duty, our responsibility is to ensure people's places of worship are respected and protected. These wars were waged because there is some holy land that they felt they had ownership on. And so that was the Crusades, and that brings us to 1200. Around the 1200s, another fitna emerged. What was that fitna? The Mongols. A ruthless tyrant rule that went from one side to another. And one of the things they did personally has to do with Baghdad. Genghis Khan, 1206, from his time to his peak, 9 million square miles of territory, making it the largest contiguous land empire in world history. Genghis Khan took people by their necks and enslaved them and told them to do what he wanted them to do. They began from one side to the other. So this is today's Mongolia. They went from this part of Asia all the way across to Europe and Romania and parts of Turkey. This is where they began. This is how far they reached. They covered all these empires that once existed. Parts of Arabia were also swallowed up in that. Today Mongolia is a country, but don't mix the country of Mongolia with what the Mongols did. Does that make sense? The Mongols started from here, they went to there, and that's where Mongolia is today right there. But this is a timeline of their movement through China, Tibet, all the way to Iran, parts of Arabia. This is what they did. Just let you see that. 1227, 1294, the Great Wall of China was built. That's your Mongolia today, between China and Russia. What they did was, under Genghis Khan, they had amazing military power and might. Their cavalry had amazing speed, mobility, and they had tools to do amazing things. They went from flatland to high-top mountains, and they took down people such as the Chinese, the Persians, and the Arabs. Their invasion in 1258, led by Hulangul Khan, is that they took over Baghdad. When they took over Baghdad, the same Abbasid Caliphate that we're talking about, he personally went there to take over Baghdad. So the golden ages were destroyed after their invasion. Not only did they kill Muslims, but they enslaved people such as the Uyghurs, the people of Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and northwestern China. These were people who had to serve under his army with no choice but to listen. March 1220, he had conquered Bukhara. What is Bukhara? Do you guys ever know where Bukhara is? the headquarter of Islam after Medina, right? Imam Bukhari came and took Medina to Bukhara. And not only was this an important city and symbolic city for Islamic learning and cultural studies, but it was also a major part of what they called the Silk Road. And he made sure that he came to show his revenge. And that is a painted portrait of Genghis Khan speaking from the mimbar of the Grand Mosque in Bukhara. So Islam saw another pitfall after all that. Abbasid Caliphate then returned, but in Egypt in 1261, where they had regrouped and reestablished the Abbasid Caliphate. The first Abbasid Caliph was Mustansir, but it was only a religious rule. They did not control the countries. And that lasted close to 1517. Then came the great, what we call the Ottoman Empire. Everyone's heard about the Ottoman Empire, right? And that's the farthest Ottoman Empire went. Through the Ottoman Empire, the northern belt of Africa, the western coast of Arabia, many of the Arab countries of today, and parts of Europe was where the Ottomans ruled. Ottoman Empire and the Caliphate went from 1517, when they actually started in 1453, but then in 1573 they not only dismantled the Caliphate in Cairo, but in the late 1800s they claimed that they were the Caliphate. So it was a build-up process. I don't want to go through everything. You can read what's there, but yes, this was like a point by point what happened with the Ottoman Caliphate. So we're already 1,000 years almost into history. World War I happened in 1914 to 1918. Is everyone with me on that? We remember when World War I happened, right? We read that in schools. Now after World War I, there was a treaty signed where the Ottomans will no longer rule through religious law. So in 1919, the Ottoman Empire was practically non-existing. At that time, the Ottomans became a lame duck rule, where the so-called Khalifa was just sitting like the Queen of England sits in Buckingham Palace, and all they did was sign papers. They had no power. But then something happened in 1924. Within 5 years of putting the Ottoman Empire down as not even a religious authority, forget a governing authority, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, one thing he did was he abolished the caliphate altogether. So the Turkish caliphate the Ottoman caliphate was destroyed in Turkey, and the power was then handed over to the parliament of the newly formed Turkish Republic. That title was claimed by Hussein bin Ali, Sharif of Mecca and Hijaz, leader of the Arabian Revolt, but his kingdom was defeated in 1925. So as soon as 1924, the caliphate was abolished in Turkey, someone said, okay, I'm the Khalifa. But within the year, he was gone also. Now, why did this happen 5 years later? Did anyone think about this? The caliphate was destroyed in World War I. Do you know what we read to our children and sing to our children and show our children affects us? It's historic. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty was the Ottoman caliphate. It was so big, it was so wobbly and unstable, it couldn't take care of itself. In World War I, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Humpty Dumpty fell. Ottoman Empire was destroyed. And it was destroyed in such a way all the king's horsemen and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. That after the Ottoman Empire was destroyed, no one will ever bring the Ottoman Empire back. No one will bring Khilafah back again. This is the promise to the world. Caliphate will never return. Brothers and sisters, if you understand what the caliphate did for the world in its rightful way, it was only progress for the world. It was only good for this world. It was only prosperity for this world. It was only unity for this world. Yes, when it became a monarchy, that became a problem. It became hereditary. But before that, it was perfectly fine. And the reason that the caliphate had to be destroyed is because the Prophet ﷺ said it's going to go, but he then said it's going to come back. But something happened why it came back, and why this happened in 1924. Yes, sorry. Next slide. Why was Hussein bin Ali, Sharif of Makkah, leader of the Arab revolt, defeated and annexed by the Saud family in 1925? Why did that happen? We're just talking about history here. We're not bad-mouthing anyone. I'm not going to Lawrence Arabia tonight. I'm not going to talk about him tonight. But I'll tell you why that happened. Because when the caliphate was put as a lame duck in 1919, they felt in 1924 to totally finish its name because of something known as the Khilafah movement. In India, how many of us know India? Yes? There was a rise, a very fast rise of something known as the Khilafah movement. And the Hindus joined forces with the Muslims on the Khilafah movement. Because the Hindus believe that if the Muslims will gain their Khilafah, we will gain our rights also. So in 1919, after the Khilafah was abolished by the Ottoman Empire, through the British colonial territories, it was strong in British India, where it formed a rally point for some Indian Muslims as one of many anti-British Indian political movements. Its leaders included Maulana Muhammad Ali Jauhar, his brother Maulana Shaukat Ali, Maulana Abul Qasim Azad, Dr. Mukhtar Ahmad Ansari, Hakim Ajmal Khan. There are many amazing names of people who rose against the British colonialism because they wanted to uphold the Khilafah. Amongst them, Mohandas Gandhi was also one of the people who joined the Khilafah movement. However, when they saw that the Indians were getting momentum to rebuild the Khilafah, they had to totally abolish it in 1924. And that's what the Ataturk did. He totally destroyed the name Khilafah. So that man sitting like the queen was totally done for. And the reason was because there was somewhat consensus in the Muslim world that we don't need a Khilafah anymore. We don't need a Khilafah. So this was Muslims pinning Muslims. Remember this. Yes, how the Umayyads and the Abbasids and how the revolts happened with each other, there's a lot of wrong. But there was a consensus by certain Muslims under British colonialism that there's no need of Khilafah. There was a big meeting called in India for the Khilafah to be restored. At that same time, a meeting was called in a Muslim country during the season of Hajj. You could figure it out. And they said that this land is every Muslim's land, so we don't need a Khilafah. It's like saying all of you can govern your own lives, we don't need a government. You know where that's going to go. And so 1924, we're almost hitting 100 years when the Khilafah's lame duck was also completely abolished. I want you all to study one thing as homework. I told you the Crusades. I want you to study colonialism. Could you do that? What the British and the French did in the world. Very important. Colonialism is a very important tool to understand your history. If you understand these two, you understand your history. I want to end tonight by talking about this. One of the things that happened during colonialism was known as Kala Pani. Has anyone here heard of the incident Kala Pani? I could only find one book written on it. After the failed uprising against the British Empire in 1857, around the time of the Ottoman Empire, there was mass slaughter of Muslim scholars from Kabul to Delhi. There was a strategic approach to kill all scholars and to burn all research. The reason they call this Kala Pani, which means black water, is because all historical research and texts that compiled technology, medicine, Islam, history was thrown into rivers. And the ink was so dense in those books that it turned the water black. If you read Kala Pani by Maulana Jafar Tanisari, rahimahullah, you'll understand the history of that. In this revolt against the British, they did not succeed, but they did not also surrender to the British. They died. And so 1863 was a deadly year for English forces in India. After the killing of scholars, the Battle of Ambala turned out to be a quagmire for the English troops. The English troops then faced intense battle. But before their defeat, there was a lot of destruction that occurred. Now, I want you to understand one thing, brothers and sisters. Our Islam before this time, before colonialism, our Islam was a global force of research, intellectual discussions. A hadith could be discussed for a month in a circle. School of thought wasn't the basis of our separation, nor was our cultural background. In Azhar University and in Medina Munawwara, they had different mihrabs and they prayed in their different times. But they worked together because knowledge was the driving force. And making societies better was the driving force. What we call Dars-e-Nizami in the Deoband curriculum and what we call the teachings of Al-Azhar and Al-Qura and all these great universities that we talk about, the curriculum is kind of the same now. You just understand a few things. You understand tafsir and hadith and just leave it to that. Nowhere are we researching knowledge anymore. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said to us in his Hajjatul Wada, تَرَكْتُ فِيكُمْ مَا إِن تَمَسَّكْتُمْ بِهِ لَن تَضِلُّوا بَعْدِي. I've given you something. If you hold on to it, you'll never go wrong. Not to memorize it, not to just put it on your shelf, but to research it. That's Kitabullahi wa Sunnat Rasulih. It's Allah's word and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Our entire world, where it's going, it's coming through the Quran and Hadith. The Prophet ﷺ already told us where it's going. But sad is the case of a Muslim today. We don't know our history. We don't know our future. The prophecies of Rasulullah ﷺ are happening before our eyes. The predictions that Allah has made and He's warned us of is happening before our eyes, but we're lost. We are truly lost. So after the butchering of knowledge, and then we had Cairo, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, and all these countries where we have traditional Islamic learning, it did not produce researchers anymore. So from the murder of scholars to the destruction of Islamic research texts, Islam as it used to be, institutions as they used to function, changed forever. During that time, way before the 1925 takeover of the land of Hijaz, Wahhabism began in 1830. And in the wake of the 1857 revolt, it became an army resistance. And even the Crown Prince just said recently on an NBC interview that Wahhabism isn't Islam. That's what the British produced. That's his words. So without going into politics, without going into comparative religions, my goal tonight was, if the world according to human legacy on this earth, from Adam alayhi salam to now, is around 10,000 years. And within these 10,000 years, all this has occurred. And tonight we went from year 569, the departure of the father of Rasulullah ﷺ, all the way to 1924. I want you all to wake up and realize the world isn't billions of years to go. That is why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Bu'ithtu ana was-sa'ati kahatayn." My sending and qiyamah is like this. Like this. What does this mean? Scholars say the distance between this finger and that finger, that's how much time. Or the distance between the two fingers, that's how much time. So if we are going to stay in this fantasy theory, this world's been around for billions and billions of years, I don't buy it. Because the more you study how old prophets were when they came, as I said, 1440 years is from the time of the immigration or the migration of the Prophet ﷺ, right? That makes it 1453 years of his prophethood. And that makes it 1493 of his birth, which makes 219 years of after Isa alayhi salam, which you add 33 years to 2019, how much is that? 52. 2052 is from the time of the birth of Isa alayhi salam. And from the time of Musa alayhi salam, it's 5,770 years. Sorry, 5,780 years. We've gone all the way back to Ulul Azmi min ar-Rusul Musa alayhi salam. Between him and Adam alayhi salam, we're talking a couple of thousand years. This world, the Prophet ﷺ said, is a stop. The best way to deceive everyone to say it's for eternity. And that's why if you can't fight the notion of the eternal being of this world, remember that no one has ever survived on this earth forever. Do you all agree? No one's history has survived on this earth forever. Allah said, there were nations before you we destroyed, there's no sign of them. And there's nations that we've destroyed, we left you signs. Fa'tabiru, take ibra, take lesson. Ya ulil albab, ya ulil absar. People who have brains, people who have eyes, take lesson. Take lesson. And there's a reason why the Prophet ﷺ told us, read Surah Kahf every Friday. There shouldn't be a Friday when Surah Kahf is not recited in your homes. Every member of the family should be reciting Surah Kahf. Because that's the only tool we have right now to stop what's happening in our world. Prophet ﷺ did not tell us to pick up arms and jump on these Toyota Tundras 2020 model with black flags and just go down the street rolling down. No, this is all bogus. It's a lie. It's a deception. What we know from the word of Rasulullah ﷺ, prophethood will end, and we know it ended. He said Khilafah will end, and we know it ended. And he said on the pretext of prophethood. So if you take that to be the Khulafa Rashideen, or you take it all the way to the Ottoman Empire, 1924, it's done. He also said there's going to be monarchy. Then he said there's going to be a dictatorship. But then there's going to be Khilafah again. Only for us to realize, if you remove the word, everyone's scared of the word, remove the word, and understand what the Khilafah of Abu Bakr and Umar were about. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's Khilafah was preservation. Umar radiallahu anhu's Khilafah was about exposition, exposing what Islam is. Every system we have in our world today, from food stamps to Medicare to support systems, all made by Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. Learn his history. His history is rich about how our world runs today. It was under these Muslims during the Abbasid Caliphate, the Golden Ages, that we talked about open heart surgeries, when the first universities were founded in the northern parts of Africa, when eye surgery and cataract surgery was done, when people tried to fly. It's all in our history. But so long we are cookie cutter Muslims, and we fight about madhab, and we fight about this and that and the other, we are our own enemy. So, concluding, this was the last slide. We've gone back, instead of talking tonight about making sure through the Old Testament that Isa alayhi salam is not God, that Allah isn't Isa alayhi salam, we took an extra step back and we tried to understand history in two phases. Histories from the time of Adam alayhi salam till today, but more importantly, history from the time of 570 to 1924. There's a lot of history to cover between the 1850s and the 2000, which will be covered inshallah at the end of these slides. But I hope we could go home and ponder and reflect that our world is strategically driven. It is not wandering in the ocean, and that Muslims were told to make sure that it goes in the right direction. If we leave this earth and we leave this earth in a worse state, we've done a great disservice to our children, our family, our community, and the entire humankind. So with that, we conclude, inshallah. Any questions? We're done, alhamdulillah. Any questions on what we talked about tonight? We have upcoming part 2. We did part 1 last month. Tonight was part 0. And then we're going to do part 2. Part 2 is going to be about the Old Testament. Then Isa Islam's life, the final days of Isa Islam, the crucifixion or not. We'll talk about the return of Isa Islam. We'll talk inshallah about who Dzul Qarnaiyn is. How many of us know who Dzul Qarnaiyn is? Know him, like his name, and know where he's from, and what family he's from. We have a lot of these assumptions. Oh, he's Alexander the Great. Oh, he has 2 horns on his head. Could anyone show me someone who has 2 horns on their head? I'll give you $5. Tell me who's got 2 horns on their head. Huh? The Longhorns. If they're playing football, then no one could beat them. If the Longhorns are playing football, no one could beat them. But apparently there's people playing there. We'll talk about who Dzul Qarnaiyn is. We'll talk inshallah about who is Gog and Magog. We will locate Gog and Magog inshallah. We will then, number 11, talk about Dajjal, return of Isa alayhi salam, and then put it all together where our world is right now. So that's another 9 months or 10 months, no, 11 months of journey to go. I appreciate all of your time and your patience. This is constant simplification of history to give you the bullet points that you can remember. And alhamdulillah, with the assistance and help of a historian, my research into 2011, I think it was, with the Bible, and alhamdulillah, what we have right now, our goal is to present to the community what they should know. Lastly, we're not talking about political. We're not talking anything political. We're not talking anything against anyone's religion, nor are we inciting terrorism or war. In Islam, we didn't fight wars. Allah fought wars. Yes or no? Yes or no? فَلَمْ تَقْتُلُوهُمْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ قَتَلَهُمْ وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. Quran is saying it. You didn't kill anyone. We killed them. You didn't throw the arrows. We threw the arrows. Those are Allah's wars. One of the good things of reading and going through all this is our children are being lured towards radical Islam. And it's real still. It is very real. And when we don't explain our text, we have people who don't know our text explaining it for us. The last thing you want is your child to believe that there is a caliphate in Syria that they have to run to and become shuhada. That's not our Islam. And that's why we can't shy away from topics. And that's why we're doing an unbiased approach of history, facts, biblical, Old Testament, New Testament, and Final Testament research. So inshallah, that's great. Jazakumullah khairan to all of you. I apologize, there's no Fajr breakfast tomorrow. There was miscoordination with the people who do the breakfast. So I apologize, we will not have the breakfast tomorrow. But inshallah, we will continue with it next month. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Rabbana zalamna anfusana wa illam taghfir lana wa tarhamna lanakunanna minal khasirin. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adhaban nar. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun al mursalin, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. I appreciate your time, man. Doing good, Hamza. Thank you so much. Need to see what I have to do here.